The first thing I understood about dying was that it is extremely loud. Alarms screamed in overlapping frequencies as my cockpit filled with fractured starlight, the stellar rift ahead of me twisting like a wound in space that refused to close. My nav system insisted we were still on course. The viewport insisted we were being swallowed. I chose to believe the viewport. "Rhea," I said to the ship as onboard intelligence, "please tell me this is a simulation glitch." Rhea responded with impeccable calm that we were experiencing catastrophic gravitational misalignment, which I translated as "we are absolutely doomed." The hull groaned as if it had opinions about this decision. I tried to angle the thrusters, but the rift pulled harder, its light bending around us in impossible geometry. For a brief, unreasonable second, I wondered whether the universe had finally grown tired of my freelance cargo routes and decided to repossess me. Impact was less of a crash and more of an argument with gravity. The world that caught me had gravity with enthusiasm. My ship punched through dense atmosphere, friction painting the sky in violent orange streaks. Trees the size of city blocks rushed upward. I braced, muttered a heartfelt apology to every engineer who had ever designed emergency systems, and then everything became soil, smoke, and ringing silence. When I crawled out of the wreckage, the air tasted thick and sweet, almost electric. My boots sank into moss that pulsed faintly under my weight, as if the planet had a heartbeat. The gravity pressed down with affectionate aggression. I took 3 steps and decided this world wanted me shorter. Behind me, my ship smoldered, its hull twisted but intact enough to inspire false hope. "Rhea," I wheezed, "status." She informed me we were alive. I congratulated us both. Then the light dimmed. At first I thought clouds had gathered, but the sky was clear, brilliant blue stretched over a valley so lush it bordered on theatrical. The dimming came from above me, a vast moving shadow that rolled across the ground. I turned slowly, because that is what one does when confronted with a shadow the size of a small continent. What I saw did not fit any survival manual I had ever skimmed. She stood at the edge of the valley, towering beyond rational measurement, her figure rising higher than the tallest trees as if scale were a suggestion she had declined. Long limbs, sculpted and powerful, carried her forward with unsettling grace. Her skin shimmered faintly, not metallic, not organic, but something energized, as though light gathered around her instead of merely touching her. Her hair fell in dark waves past her shoulders, each strand moving with the wind like a banner announcing her arrival. And her eyes, vast, keen, impossibly focused, locked onto me with an expression that hovered between curiosity and amusement. I considered fainting. It felt traditional. She crouched, and the ground shuddered in polite terror. Her face descended toward me until it filled the horizon. The scale difference was so extreme that perspective gave up trying to be helpful. I raised one hand in what I hoped was a universal sign for hello, and not "please do not examine me like a specimen." Her lips curved. "Well," she said, her voice resonant and layered as if harmonics followed her words, "the small starwalker survives." The language slid into my translator implant with surprising compatibility. I blinked. "I usually do," I replied, because panic makes me conversational. A breath of wind swept over me as she laughed. It carried warmth and a faint charge that made the fine hairs on my arms rise. Behind her, I noticed movement, other towering silhouettes along the ridgeline, watching. My brain attempted to categorize them. My brain failed. She extended a single finger toward me. It was longer than my entire body. Carefully, delicately, she pressed the tip against the ground near my boots, testing the soil, not me. The restraint was deliberate. "You fell through the sky and did not burn," she observed. "You did not expand." "Expand," I echoed, her eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "This world amplifies, all that lives here grows in scale and strength, yet you remain delightfully unchanged." "I try not to overachieve," I said. Another ripple of laughter moved through her, softer this time. I am Zareth Vera of the Untamed, she declared, straightening slightly but not enough to remove herself from my immediate reality. And you, small one, have arrived at an inconvenient moment. I glanced back at my wrecked ship, then up at her monumental silhouette against the blazing sky. Story of my life, I muttered. Far beneath the humor, something in her gaze shifted. Intensity, calculation, perhaps even hope. I realized then that I was not being evaluated as prey. I was being measured against a problem. And for reasons I could not yet explain, that terrified me far more than her size. If you have never been invited to walk beside someone whose single stride equals your daily cardio, I do not recommend it as a relaxing afternoon activity. Zareth Vera did not pick me up, which I appreciated on a deeply existential level, but she did gesture for me to follow. Each time her foot met the ground, the earth answered like a drum. I jogged. She walked. We covered what I suspect was several kilometers in the time it took me to reconsider every life decision that led to freelance piloting near stellar anomalies. You are compensating well, she called down, her voice resonating through the valley. I'm flattered, I panted. Most planets try to kill me faster. The terrain shifted from moss-laden fields to terraced stone formations carved with luminous lines that pulsed in steady intervals. My implant flickered, struggling to interpret the energy signatures. The air itself hummed faintly, as if threaded with invisible current. Zareth noticed my attention drifting to the glowing channels etched into the ground. You feel it, she said. I feel like I'm standing inside a battery, I replied. Her lips curved again, but there was no mockery in it. This world carries an amplification lattice. It enhances biological mass and bioelectric output. Our bodies respond. Yours does not. That sounds like a medical condition, I said. Should I be worried? Perhaps, she answered calmly, but not in the way you assume. Ahead, the valley opened into a city that redefined proportion. Structures rose from cliff faces, carved directly into mountain stone, their surfaces veined with the same luminous circuitry I had seen along the terraces. Bridges arched between peaks like strands of woven light. Giant figures moved through the spaces with effortless familiarity, their conversations rolling across the landscape like distant thunder. I felt less like a visitor and more like an annotation. As we approached, several of the colossal women turned their attention toward us, their gazes fixed on me with sharp curiosity. One leaned down slightly, studying me as though I were an unusual mineral sample. It did not expand, she observed. I'm right here, I said, waving. Zareth's expression sharpened. He survives the atmospheric descent. He resists the lattice. That alone grants him audience. Audience, I repeated quietly. That sounds official. It is, she said. We entered a vast open forum carved into the mountainside. The stone beneath my boots vibrated faintly with synchronized pulses, as if the entire structure were alive. At the center stood a circular platform etched with spiraling patterns that converged on a crystalline column, emitting a steady harmonic tone. My implant registered fluctuations deep beneath the planet's crust, core instability, oscillating frequencies slipping out of alignment. Zareth knelt once more, lowering herself so that her eyes met mine at something closer to equality, though the illusion lasted only from my perspective. Our core weakens, she said. The amplification field destabilizes. When it collapses, so will we. That seems suboptimal, I offered. A faint huff of amusement escaped her. Your humor is inefficient but tolerable. Thank you, I practice. Another giantess stepped forward, taller even than Zareth, her posture rigid with authority. You bring him to the forum without council sanction, she said. I bring him because the council hesitates, Zareth replied evenly. The archives speak of a counterharmonic entity, a being immune to amplification. Every enormous gaze returned to me. I resisted the urge to check behind me for someone more qualified. I fix cargo ships, I said carefully. I am not a planetary tuning fork. You may be both, Zareth said. The crystalline column at the center of the forum flickered, its harmonic tone wavering into a discordant vibration that rattled through my bones. The giantesses shifted uneasily. Even at their scale, they reacted like people hearing the crack in a foundation. Zareth extended her hand, palm open beside me, not touching, offering. The untamed believe the lattice can be recalibrated, she said, but only with an external constant. You are constant. Or broken, I countered. Her eyes softened just slightly. We will determine which. I looked at the towering faces around me, at the city carved into mountains, at the luminous veins pulsing beneath everything. I had crash-landed into a civilization built on amplified strength, and somehow my greatest asset was remaining small. Fine, I said at last. But if this involves running under more gravity, I want it officially recorded that I object. Zareth's laughter rolled across the forum, and despite the tremor beneath our feet, I found myself smiling back. They called it a trial, which I assumed meant ceremonial chanting and possibly dramatic pointing. What it actually meant was that I would be placed at the center of a planetary physics experiment, while several towering alien women observed whether I flattened into paste. The untamed gathered along the rim of the forum, their silhouettes forming a living wall of muscle and luminous skin, while the crystalline column in the center pulsed with increasingly uneven light. Zareth stood closest to me, arms folded, expression focused but not unkind. The first measure is gravitational tolerance, she said. Define tolerance, I replied, because mine usually ends at mild inconvenience. A faint smile touched her lips. She gestured toward the circular platform. I stepped onto it, and the spiraling patterns beneath my boots ignited with soft blue light. My implant spiked with data. The lattice was adjusting local gravity vectors, intensifying and then easing in calculated waves. The first surge pressed me down hard enough to make my knees complain. The second lifted slightly, then pressed again like a cosmic entity testing a handshake. You are increasing it on purpose, I muttered. Yes, Zareth confirmed. Your structure remains unchanged. The field does not amplify you. We must know your limits. I usually discover those by accident. The gravity swelled again, heavier now, the air thickening around my lungs. I focused on breathing in measured cycles, sinking subconsciously to the crystalline column's erratic tone. My boots remained the same size. My hands did not expand. Around me, the giantesses watched with intense curiosity. He compresses but does not scale, one observed. I can hear you, I called out. That is impressive, she answered. Zareth leaned closer, her shadow enveloping the platform without touching it. You resist resonance. The lattice searches for harmonic engagement and finds none. I've been accused of being difficult before, I said, forcing a grin. The gravity receded abruptly, and I straightened, trying to look less winded than I felt. Zareth's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. She extended one long finger and tapped the air just above my head. A faint ripple shimmered around me, an energy scan. My implant flickered as her technology interfaced with it, surprisingly compatible despite originating from a civilization that had never left its planet. Second measure, she said. Cognitive synchronization. That sounds worse. The crystalline column emitted a fluctuating sequence of tones, shifting in complex mathematical patterns. Symbols lit up across the platform beneath my feet. My implant translated partial sequences, waveforms, phase alignments, harmonic intervals tied directly to the planet's core oscillation. It was not music. It was a heartbeat struggling to maintain rhythm. You must predict the next phase shift, Zareth explained. You want me to outguess a planet? Yes, of course you do. I closed my eyes briefly, filtering the noise. The tones weren't random. They carried micro-delays, subtle hesitations before each spike. The core was destabilizing not in chaos but in misalignment. I tapped one of the illuminated symbols. The column brightened, stabilizing for a breath. A murmur rippled through the untamed. He anticipates without amplification, someone said. I anticipate because if I fail, I assume the floor eats me, I answered. The tones accelerated. I adjusted again, selecting another phase alignment. The column steadied longer this time, its light smoothing into a cleaner resonance. My implant vibrated with confirmation signals. Zareth exhaled slowly, a sound like distant wind across cliffs. You interact without being absorbed, she said quietly. Story of my life, I replied. I never quite fit in. For a moment, humor faded from her expression. Our core is fracturing because our own amplified frequencies interfere. We are too powerful for our lattice to contain. You are outside the equation. Congratulations, I said. You found someone average enough to help. A ripple of laughter, deeper and more restrained, moved through the gathered giantesses. Even under tension, they responded to levity. It eased something in the air. The crystalline column flickered again, a sharper tremor running through the stone beneath us. This one carried urgency. Zareth's gaze shifted from me to the column and back. The final measure is resilience, she said, not of body or mind alone, but of choice. That sounds philosophical, I replied warily. It is practical, she corrected. You can attempt integration with the lattice and risk permanent entanglement, or you can refuse. I looked up at her immense form, at the power coiled effortlessly within her stance, at the faint instability trembling through the city carved into mountains. The untamed were not reckless. They were standing on a fault line of their own evolution. So the trial isn't about whether I survive you, I said slowly. It's about whether I stay. Zareth's eyes held mine, vast and unwavering. Yes. I glanced at the crystalline column, then back at her. You know, I said, forcing a thin smile, most people just ask for help with a handshake. Her answering smile was softer, almost grateful. We are still learning subtlety. The platform dimmed, but the decision remained, heavy as the amplified gravity that had tried and failed to change me. I returned to my ship because it was the last place that still felt proportionate. The hull was scarred but functional, its systems humming in stubborn defiance. Rhea projected repair estimates with clinical optimism. Escape was possible, risky but possible. I stood at the base of the ramp and looked back toward the mountain city, where luminous veins pulsed unevenly beneath colossal stone structures. The planetary lattice vibrated through the air like a nervous system on the verge of seizure. You can leave, Rhea reminded me. I know, I said. Above the valley rim, Zareth waited. She did not approach the wreckage this time. She allowed me the distance which somehow made the choice heavier. When I walked back toward the forum, gravity pressed against me as it always had, unchanged. For the first time since I landed, I did not resent it. The untamed gathered again around the crystalline column. Its light flickered erratically now, each pulse slightly out of phase with the last. Seismic tremors rippled through the platform in irregular intervals. Zareth lowered herself until her gaze aligned with mine. If you integrate, your molecular structure may anchor to the lattice permanently, she said. You may never leave. That's one way to avoid navigation failures, I replied. A faint curve touched her lips, but her eyes remained steady. If you refuse, we will continue seeking solutions, but time diminishes. I looked at the towering figures encircling us. They were warriors, engineers, thinkers, beings of amplified strength facing the limit of their own power. When I first saw them, I thought scale equaled dominance. Now I understood it also magnified consequence. Activate the interface, I said. The platform flared to life. Conduits of light spiraled upward from the stone and intersected above me, forming a lattice cage of shimmering energy. My implant screamed warnings, then recalibrated as alien systems synchronized with human firmware. I felt the planet's core as a distant, unstable rhythm, a massive engine misfiring beneath layers of rock. Provide counterphase input, Zareth instructed. Working on it, I muttered. I focused on the oscillation pattern I had learned during the trial. The core did not need force, it needed contrast. My unamplified bioelectric field became the constant. I adjusted my implant's emitter to project a stable harmonic, matching but not merging. The crystalline column brightened, its discord smoothing by degrees. The tremors intensified briefly, throwing me to one knee. Overhead, arcs of energy snapped and reconnected. Zareth extended her hand near the lattice without touching it, shielding stray discharges from striking me. Her restraint was precise, deliberate. "You are not overwhelmed," she said. "I'm too stubborn," I answered through clenched teeth. The harmonic alignment deepened. The erratic pulses beneath the platform began to space evenly. My implant vibrated as it locked into a sustained counterfrequency. For a moment everything went silent, not absence of sound, but coherence. The core's rhythm steadied, no longer fighting itself. The lattice cage dissolved into fading threads of light. I remained the same size. The planet did not swallow me. Around us, the luminous veins embedded in the stone glowed with renewed consistency. A wave of relief moved through the untamed, not explosive celebration, but collective exhale. Zareth studied me, something like awe flickering across her immense features. "You have anchored the oscillation," she said quietly. "For now," I corrected, "it'll need monitoring, maintenance, maybe less amplification ego." A low ripple of laughter answered me. Even the taller council representative allowed a restrained nod. Zareth straightened slowly, her silhouette framed against a sky that no longer trembled with instability. "You can remain," she said. "Your constant presence would strengthen the lattice." I glanced toward my ship, small and solitary at the edge of the valley. For the first time in years, leaving did not feel like the obvious solution. "I won't anchor you forever," I said, "but I can teach you how to build your own counterphase systems, external stabilizers. You don't need to be less powerful, just balanced." Her eyes softened, the fierce confidence tempered by understanding. "Then you are not merely a solution," she said. "You are a teacher." "Let's not exaggerate," I replied. "I barely passed my own exams." The city behind her shimmered in steady light. The planet's heartbeat echoed through the air, no longer frantic. I had crash-landed expecting chaos wrapped in danger. Instead, I found a civilization confronting its own evolution, and I discovered that remaining unchanged could be its own kind of strength.